You're listening to the Comic Crusaders podcast. I am your host, Al Mega, CEO of Comic Crusaders and Undercover Capes. In this show, I'm sitting down with creators from all walks of life to talk about inspiration, process, the lessons they've learned, and a whole lot more.
Wepa! What up, mi gente? It's your boy Al Mega. Welcome to a brand new Comic Crusaders podcast, the 352nd episode. My gosh, I've been running my mouth for a minute, apparently. Wow, wepa! But what? You know what I've been doing? Celebrating amazing independent creators, and this episode is just like the other. We got another homie in the biz. He's an amazing creator. He's an author of an epic fantasy saga that just funded recently on Kickstarter. We're going to get into that, and what the future lies and his whole journey. It's called Ennead, the Rule of Nine. They introduce the one, the only, the future legend himself coming to the ring of CCB, Mr. J.L. Johnson Jr. Wepa, how you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you for having me.
Nah, thanks for coming through, brother, and to discuss that epic saga for real. I mean, I'm in the middle of reading the book. Thank you for the PDF again. I got a lot. People send me a lot of material, brother. So hard to keep up, but I definitely do try to keep up. And and once I finish, I'll definitely want to compliment folks, and talk about their work. But what you're doing right now definitely got me hooked and intrigued. I was happy you were a minute late. Like, all right, good. I get to read a little bit more.
Yeah, what I sent you was, a decent chunk of homework. So I'm glad you got through some of it.
Oh no, it's fantastic. I mean, what world building? But we're gonna get into all that, get into this mind. So really back to this is a comic book podcast. We gotta talk about them origins. So talk about where you hail from originally and the first thing in pop culture you ever fell in love with.
Oof. I got nervous when I heard that question. I was like, I don't know, but then they hit me. So I'm born and raised in northern New Jersey. I'm still here. I grew up in Montclair, New Jersey, so I'm about a town over from there now. I won't say where. People are crazy on the internet.
Shit.
Yeah, I'm not too far. But the earliest, the first thing I remember falling in love with was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Which I got nervous because in my head I'm like, what was it? But that not only is that the honest answer, that has some independent comics origins too. So I think it was
Mirage, of course. I mean, Kevin Eastman and his other homie definitely, did the business there and brought something new that blew up on a level that I think opened a lot of independent creators' eyes. At least especially at the time.
For sure. And I remember just spending hours, whether it was watching the cartoon as a kid or when the movie started dropping or even the action figures. That was the thing for me. I had all the action figures. I remember spending hours setting them up like we were going through different episodes. And, that's probably some of the first storytelling I ever tinkered with too as a kid, setting up these turtles and giving them things to do.
So I hear you. Were you an only child or did you have siblings?
All of my siblings I do have siblings, but we're all 10 years apart. So
man, just like me and my brothers, I feel you. So we had overactive imaginations before they were even born.
So I was definitely spending a lot of quality time just stacking up, toys. And then the first thing, when you really first started asking that question, I was thinking, is it Power Rangers? And I'm like, no, that wasn't first. And then Sonic the Hedgehog, no, it was definitely the Turtles, man. I think I could tell similar stories about both of those other, properties, but it was definitely the Turtles. I'm a Donatello guy myself.
There we go. You got to see. I have a friend. Big shout out to Claps. You got to see. He has still it's about a complete OG Ninja Turtles connection. He even got the blimp. You got the whole joint for them TMNT old schools.
I remember the little van had the turtle shell top.
Hey,
I wish I was smart enough to keep them, but I'm sure I got too cool and threw them away or something.
So because you were the oldest, were you also alone as a geek in your fandom, or did you have kind of a tribe, of homies that rode with you in your geekdom?
No, and that also fits into, you know, my origin story as a writer. If I could just quickly jump around the timeline a bit, I ended up hiding that. You know, in my early teens and teen years, it wasn't really cool to be into, you know, the geeky stuff yet. And so, no, you know, my friends and I, we were, you know, we talked sports, we talked girls, we talked parties. We didn't talk comic books and science fiction and fantasy, all the stuff that I really love. I wish it was like it is now, where you could just lean in all the way.
Yeah, you and me both, brother.
But you know, I guess that was also you had to go through that phase to get to where we are now, where the most popular things in the world all come from that you know, nerd geek slash, you know, pop culture place now. You know, it's a weird phenomenon, but I'm definitely enjoying it.
All right, all right. So you're alone and doing your thing, things apart from the siblings. You're hiding yourself. So talk about then how did your journey in the comic book industry began, and what experiences shaped the career that then inspired what Ennead is.
You know, and like I said, just bouncing around. So back in 2015, I was working in a school district, and I just realized for a lot of reasons that wasn't just wasn't for me. But you know, I still felt like part of that journey as a teacher was molding me as a storyteller. So when I walked away from that job, the first thing that I did is I went on vacation with my then girlfriend, now wife, and I just wrote the entire trip. And what I actually ended up writing were two or three different, you know, outlines for comic book series. And it kind of came out of nowhere. Like I really didn't sit down with the desire to do that. I opened up Scrivener on my laptop, and I think I just started playing around with a comic book template. Well, not to get too far ahead, I ended up sending out some of those scripts that I eventually developed to artists, and they were like, "Dude, what? Can we curse on this show?"
Yeah, of course. We're an adult. Don't you worry. This is an adult. It's ain't for kids, folks. I say that straight up. This ain't not for kids. This is an adult show. We got to be honest. It's creative, so this is about how you feel. So whatever you feel, bro.
Basically, the response was, "What the fuck is this? Like, this is not proper formatting. I am not reading this. No, I am not working with you." And so I fell back, and that was probably 2015, 2016. But I kept writing, kept developing these series. And then one thing led to another, and I kept coming back to what eventually is now Ennead. And, you know, I kept honing the craft and checking in with artists here and there, getting feedback from them about what it was supposed to look like. And one thing led to another, and I finally had what was Ennead, and I sent it to an editor. Okay. Right when I was getting ready to cash it all in and say, you know what, this isn't it for me. And the editor got back to me with some amazing feedback. And I had that moment of, oh, I can do this. Nice. And that was early 2020. And then I kind of dove headfirst from there.
Oh man. So so now you're diving in headfirst. What was that learning curve like? Or were you aware of what you were diving into already?
So from a behind the scenes writing perspective, I was definitely prepared because I had spent 3 or 4 years just constantly, you know, I would go to DeviantArt and just chat with artists. I would go, you know, whether it was Twitter, Facebook, whatever it was at the time, send people my scripts. I was getting feedback along the way. But then when you get into the actual comic creation and you realize how collaborative it is when rubber meets the road, that was definitely learning on the job. You know, I had some great artists that I worked with in the development phase. Shout out to Julia Gulazzi. You can see her name on some Marvel covers these days. She was big in helping me just learn how to work with an artist. You know, she was very patient. You know, I had some other folks along the way whose names I'm blanking on right now. But once I got the initial work with artists under my belt, then I felt like things shifted again when it got to project management and things like Kickstarter. So definitely, I like to think about base camp. You think about climbing Mount Everest, right? Right. You think you got it, you get to base camp, you settle in, you're like, oh yeah, I did that. But then that next level, it's like, oh, it's a whole new climb. But I feel like there's enough plateaus in between it that I can kind of catch up. And I'm definitely on one of those right now, just trying to recalibrate and figure everything out, figure out what my next steps are.
All right, so as we figure it out, what makes Ennead then the rule of 9 stand out from the fantasy comics that are currently in the market today? Let's get into that story and this world building you're doing.
So the two ways that I hear that question. The first one is just in structure. A lot of the fantasy comics that I enjoy, the one that comes to mind always, or at least it used to when I got asked this question, was Birthright.
Great choice. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I am not knocking Birthright. I enjoy Birthright. But it's almost more action adventure than it is true epic fantasy. And what I mean when I say that is, yes, there's lore, there's history, but it's a linear story for the most part.
It's more Conan.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's not a problem, but that's what sets Ennead apart. Ennead is trying to do the Lord of the Rings, the Game of Thrones, the Cosmere. Like, let's take these really big, illustrative fantasy worlds and let's just let them play out in comics. And one of the reasons why I really wanted to run with that is every time I read an epic fantasy, I see it in pictures. I always saw it as a comic. And I always kept waiting. I want this. I want this. I want someone to write this. I want someone. And then they came out with the graphic novel versions of Game of Thrones, and seeing that and knowing what I know about that story, I was like, yes, this can be done. You can be patient. Comic fans want stories that continue. They love ongoing series. And so that to me is the thing that stands out about Ennead, is that I'm being extremely patient and I'm letting what makes epic fantasy be epic fantasy. But we get to see it unfold in pictures, panel by panel.
Oh, beautiful. Let me add this. This is that successful Kickstarter that you just had recently right here, baby. Look at that. Epic comic book collector's box. Let me play that video real quick. All right. That way you guys can check this out. Get a tease. And it'll be nice if I hit play, right?
Kickstarter. After a very quiet 2022, wherein we only launched one campaign to get Volume 1 fully colored, we're back to kick off 2023 with a bang. This campaign will be focused on a special edition of Volume 1, where you get to focus through Renatu's eyes and his eyes only, and replay the events of Volume 1 with a brand new perspective. Not only that, you'll get a sneak peek at where Renatu's going to end up in Volume 2, which is scheduled for release at the end of this year. Golden Neurosis will be available for those of you who choose to back. The 100 will be found in our collector's box, which has two exclusives, a die-cut sticker and a matte black Renatu trading card. I couldn't be more excited for the things that I'm preparing to bring your way in 2023. And I hope that this campaign wets your palate just enough to keep coming back all year. Thanks again. Happy backing.
And it was definitely a happy backing, wasn't it?
It was, that was a big celebration, man. That was my 6th Kickstarter campaign, I want to say. Yeah, I think it was my 6th. And
the successful?
Yes, 6 for 6.
6 for 6. Look at you, buying 100, baby. I love it.
And so I was it's funny, I'm watching that. So that I recorded that. There's literally nothing else in that apartment other than what's behind me on that bookshelf. I had moved out of that like the week before that, but we still had the lease. And so I got off work, late at night, ran over there, had my spotlight on, and I just saw him watching that and just chuckling. I didn't know you were gonna play that. I didn't mean to wear that shirt. But it's funny how it works. So but it was a big celebration because, again, like as I was kind of hinting at, the early part of my comic book journey, I didn't really think anybody was going to read my stuff. I didn't think I was going to be able to, as someone completely independent, kind of coming out of the field, master.
Why would you think that? Why would you honestly? I got to get into this feeling of why you independent creators get into this feeling like you have something that's awesome. What is it? What is it?
For me personally, I didn't know if I had a good enough understanding of the medium to make it work.
Even with the work you did.
Say again?
even with the homework you did, because you were telling me you were going into your joints, you were speaking to people, even with you doing that, you still didn't build up that confidence.
It took, and the short answer to that is no. It took until June 2020, where most of us are on our couches. So for a full-time job, I manage a gym, so I certainly wasn't working, and money wasn't coming in, and here I am messing around trying to write this comic book, and it just like I had hit some snags with some of those artists and their schedules. They took bigger gigs, they took jobs that they should have taken. Like I said, Julia now finds herself doing work for Marvel, so that she made the right choice. But I felt like, this just isn't working. And then I sent an email to an editor, shout out to Laura. And what she said to me actually was what kept me going. And she said, so you're telling me you don't do this for a living? She was like, this is your first time really writing comic book scripts? And I explained like what my journey was. And she was like, this doesn't make any sense. You know how to do this. Like, this is what it should look like. You should go with this. And it was that external push that finally made it click for me. And so when I'm looking at the first volume, over 180 pages in this world,
wow.
When I'm recording that video, I was on cloud nine, because I got to the point where I'm making little miniatures and collectibles, and I've got multiple covers, and so it really was that email response when I sent out that first issue script to this editor that was when the confidence kicked in. But before that, the self-doubt was real.
I need one of those joints for my Skeletor to hold down.
I got you. I got a few more things coming. I know you said we get into that, but one of the things that this little hiatus I've been on has allowed me to do is just assess what I have been able to do. A lot of people, and you asking me this last question is just another version of that reminder that as independent creators, we should be proud of what we're doing. We should take ownership of it. We should pat ourselves on the back. And that's really what I spent like the last 3-4 months doing, like appreciating not only the support, but the work that I put in. We always thank folks who help us, especially with Kickstarter being such a big part of this. But I am proud of what I've done. And I do think I have what it takes to bring this thing home.
Oh, you absolutely do. Listen, like I said, I was reading. I was in it deep, man. Normally I'm like, oh man, they're late. Not this time. You know what? Yeah, all right, no problem. I know he's showing up. We already discussed this. So he's gonna keep being me patient. Don't worry, take your time. I was funny. You made the right art choices. Very funny. I was thinking about this as I was reading. I was like, it's very much like an Andrew McLean style, like Headlopper. It looks like, you know what I mean, in that style. But you're doing obviously something, even on a larger scale than what Headlopper is, of course. But just in the art style, I really dug it. What made you select that type of look for the book?
So that shout out to Luke Horsman, who really sets the tone for the visuals. I do work with a few other artists, Edward Lively, Apple Nunez, Martin Nealon, to name a few. I have some others that I've worked with, but their stuff hasn't been released yet, so I'll hold their names back for now. But Luke set the tone, and when I found Luke, what was crazy is I went on his website after someone either sent me his art or I found him on Instagram. And when you went on his website a few years ago, it was a 3D homepage. So you could scroll around the homepage and you were in the middle of an alien like flea market is the way that it kind of read to me. And when I saw that, I was like, this dude understands world building. I could just tell.
Yeah.
And so that really is what sold me. But then I went even deeper and I looked at the way that his art just was so fluid. And I he had worked with a couple of independent folks. So I went and bought their books and read their books. I'm like, this is the guy. So initially I had more of a desire to make it, look like it was on TV, hyper realistic. Because I felt like what I was doing was trying to tell this elevated story. So I wanted to, and again, not knocking Luke's art. Luke is fantastic. I wanted this elevated, kind of elegant artwork. But then I saw what Luke was doing and I realized, no, that's a mistake. You gotta, in order for this to feel as alive to readers as it does to me, this thing's gotta move, it's gotta flow, it's gotta breathe.
Yeah. That art does look like it moves I know I say this, but nah, it sounds you said it for me. It's some real business, folks. The art moves in those panels. It's I don't know what voodoo he did on them, but when you look and just flow through the panels, it has a beautiful movement to it. It does, as you say, he definitely skilled. Very cool shit.
I don't know if you want to pull back up the Kickstarter page, but we could definitely talk through some of those pages. And I think I put a preview for what will now be book 10 on there. And if I didn't, there's definitely at least the first 6 or 7 books worth of stuff. If you just want to give an example, and I could talk through it, but
no, absolutely, it's funny. I have to pull it up on a different because Chrome is very naughty to me, very naughty when it comes to that. But look at that beautiful cover on that joint.
So this was actually a gift. So shout out to Cody, Mr. Schroeder, who I had reached out to him, and I asked him like, "Hey man, I love your work. Do you think you could, work with me on a cover?" And he's like, "No, I'm busy, but I do like what you're doing. Hit me up in a few months, whatever." It was super nice, super professional. I went my separate ways. Like 2 days later, he hit me up and was like, "I got a gift for you," and it was this. And so, I went back and obviously asked for his permission to throw it on a cover. Shout out to B. Navarro, who then brought color to it. But yeah, man, this is a Natu Kinnisk. This is the man, hopefully the myth and the legend one day. But this is the guy that any of the Rule of Nine kind of centers around. And there's an interesting little tidbit there that if you wanted, I could dive into just about how he was brought into the world, and we could use this to pivot into the world building too.
Talk, baby, talk. This is your show. Right?
Yeah. So I take it back to 2020. Before I send anything out to that editor, I had 6 or 7 people in my circle, friends, associates, who were willing to read what at the time was 7 issues worth of comic book script. So straight up, no art, no nothing, panel descriptions. If you've ever read a comic book script, not the most interesting to read. But I had some folks who read it, and they also provided feedback, letting me know they actually read it. And the main thing was, this world seems fantastic. I love it. It's big. I can tell how, all the kind niceties about the world building, but they felt that it was too distant, and they felt like they had no one to walk with. And so I had this idea of this medieval bounty hunter. I'm also a Star Wars fan, and of course Boba Fett was always, someone who's just ingrained in my mind. And so I figured, well, how can I bring Boba Fett to a fantasy story? And so I started looking across my map. I went to, what I call the islands of Kavana, which is a militaristic culture. Their culture centers around their navy. They have a very particular way of existing in the world. All the firstborn in every family, man or woman, are drafted into their navy. Natu is the oldest in his family. So he starts out on this journey, and basically some things happen, and he ends up walking away from not only service after his mandatory 10-year, 20-year service. He walks away from his faith, from his family, from his home, and tries to find a new beginning. And so he heads to the Republic Kingdom of Athea, which is kind of the main stage of any of the Rule of Nine, where the Rule of Nine is the law of the land. And he's looking for a fresh new start. All he's been hearing about his whole life is how great this place is. For reasons, Kavanians don't usually travel to Athea. I like to keep that one a secret until you actually read it, because that plays itself out. But long story short, he's now lost. He's in this new place, and just so happens that this place is sitting on the brink of war. And so we get to see it all unfold around him. And so he's certainly the character that brings it all together. And if you come to Ennead now, he looks like such an intricate part of it. But I literally wrote the whole first volume, and he didn't exist.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and so for what you've read, I'm sure you've seen his face a bunch by now. And
yeah, definitely have a whole bunch, and people seem to feel a type of way over home. So,
and that's because everyone knows Araukita, right? And Araukita, that's the name of the basically like the Navy SEALs in the island of Cabana. And they know them because they carry this weapon. And so for folks who don't know, this is a kind of medieval-esque tale. It takes place in the fictional world of Amashik. But, definitely I play around with basically any culture, every culture from 1100 to the introduction of gunpowder. And depending on where you are in the world, that's, a couple different decades there. But that's kind of where I take the inspiration from. And so swords, maces, you have arrows, you have all these different weapons, but here's this guy walking around with this blunted object with these gnarly teeth at the end that, couldn't really, unless he's bashing over the head with it, not really going to be able to kill you with it, right? So
look at that though. I mean, if you try to block it, your hand's coming off.
Oh yeah, it definitely.
If you're a fool, that means to go like this.
They're not afraid of maiming in Cabana, but one of the things that Raukita is meant to do is capture, not kill. So he walks around with a dagger, and then this kind of 6-foot Eurosa is what I call it, but it's really modeled after the ancient man catcher. And so, that look stands out. It's a very bold look. They don't cut their hair, so you can see he's got the locks. And so everyone knows who he is, and they've got a reputation across Amashik. So yeah, he's not taken too kindly when he gets to Athea. That's for sure.
Yeah, people definitely. I mean, and there was the thing. I gotta put him up against. You gotta make a figure so we can put him in the He-Man universe. Him up against Skeletor, staff for staff. Who wins? Look at these cool little collector boxes here, yo. What is up?
Thank you. There's a moment in volume 1 towards the end where, basically, and this isn't too much of a spoiler, but the journey through volume 1 is what you could call a prelude for every one of these characters. What gets them to where we actually want to see them, which is in the middle of these conflicts. There's plenty of violence in volume 1. I don't try to shy away from that, but I did want to be intentional, right? So from Anatu's first tussle in that tavern, which I think is mandatory in every fantasy story, you got to fight in a tavern. But from that to where he gets at the end of volume 1, you almost see like this peeling back. He's trying to start this new life. He's trying to get away from his life of service, which is really a life of violence, right? I want to make sure that he's careful and that he's not just going back, because he had a reason for leaving, right? But eventually at the end of volume 1, he says, fuck it. If this is what this place wants me to be, if this is what this place thinks I am, then in order to survive, I got to be it. And so, you can't see it the way it's cropped here, but the top of his helmet is in his hand in this image. And it's just, again, shout out to Cody for illustrating this the way he did, because it just captures who Anatu is. He is a Raukita. He is a warrior, but he's trying to be that warrior in a garden. And volume 1 just shows how hard that is.
And this is a crazy image there with another crazy looking weapon. Jesus, it's insane.
Yeah, so there's some things that I play around with. Like I said, I'm pulling inspiration from what we would just loosely call the medieval world, not just medieval Europe, but pull from the Americas, pull from the African continent, pull from the Far East, and I'm trying to bring a world to folks that looks familiar but still new. And that is where, again, Luke's ability to be so fluid and have this art jump off the page really came in handy. And that was where that was how I made that decision, because I knew the story I wanted to tell was so alive for me. I started building the world of Amashik probably in like 2016-ish when I started writing these scripts, but it was for another story. I guess you could say it was always for this story, right? But I was trying to fit other things into it. And then ultimately, I just decided to tell the story of that world. And Anatu ended up being a really important part of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, beautiful. I mean, look, they get some samples of the art. They get that. See what I'm saying, yo? That panel usage there. Tell me that doesn't flow cinematically, man. Gorgeous. See, oh man, you got parchment paper maps and this, all that you did on this joint. Crazy. Look at that.
The maps, shout out to she goes by Dominique Strange on the internet, so I won't tell her full name. But shout out to her. She's relatively local to me as well, and I came across her work, and I had actually taken a big whiteboard and done the old D&D trick of pouring coffee beans on a table and tracing the shapes, and I used what I knew of the world of Amashik that I was creating um, to basically line things up. So I knew geographically certain countries had been at war 50 years ago. Well, that they had to be this far away in order to not have decimated one another. I'm thinking about logistical, lines for militaries to march. If I say these people were over here, So after I did that and made a very crude version of my map, I found Dominique and she put that together. And one
So,
of my favorite things now is taking the whole world and spreading it out. And I have it on the front of my table at cons. And it is a very big conversation starter for folks when they walk by. Because it isn't an empty world. I've got history for all of Amashik, dating back to an event known as the Separation, which is a couple hundred years before the events of this story.
ooh, and look at it with the coloring, folks. What a beauty, isn't it? Look at that. Oof. Yeah, that coloring is wonderful.
Thank you. That's all B Navarro. So I found B again. The community of artists out there. B is from Brazil, and the community of artists in the indie scene. They're deep. The roster is deep. So I don't know how I came across B, but when I did, I knew that her use of color was going to be perfect because again, while it one of the things that I love about epic fantasy is that feeling of you know immersion. And even though it's not real, right? You still can feel a part of it. And there's something about the way she uses color, right? It's like she
That
sent
Bob Ross on them leaves right there. I'll tell you that much.
she sent me something early on when she first started coloring because this is originally all black and white and I didn't get it colored until last year. So all first volume originally came out black and white. The readers who had rocked with me for 2-3 years said, "Hey, we just want this in color." I said, "Well, you technically paid for it, so fine, you can get it in color." Um, and so B sent me something early on. She had this like purple and orange sky, and in my head, I'm like, "I've never seen a sky that color. Like, are we sure we want to do this?" And then she literally pulled over, took a picture using her cell phone, and sent it to me. And while it wasn't the same purples and oranges, I immediately saw what she saw. And
Yeah.
so from then I kind of fell back and said, all right, well, we're just going to use your color palette. Whatever you think works, here are the things that need to be red because it's this, this banner. Here's what needs to be blue because it's this banner. But everything else, do your thing. And that color, like the art, I think just fits the fantasy genre really well.
I mean, look at that. Look at this. Fire. And why again, and even the word bubbles I noticed is different. Normally they're white word bubbles, you know what I mean, with black lettering. You went total opposite, for the book.
And
Why?
that was so I think that was just an original byproduct of the black and white pages. And that was actually all Luke. I can't even take credit for that. Luke, yeah, because I letter the project now. But when I first started, Luke was lettering for me. And then probably by the third book, I took over. And so when he first started, I think his thinking was he knew how dynamic the art had to be because in his mind at that time, I told him there was going to be no color in this project.
Mhm.
And so I think he just went with the black because it popped on his artwork in a way that the traditional white just doesn't. I've actually gone back and kind of relettered some of the original stuff, and I started tinkering with the idea of redoing and stepping away from the black, and I did, and it didn't feel like the same project. And so that was why I stuck with that. There are still some of the books that you can find with the white bubbles, but the black to me is just it's become synonymous with Ennead.
Like great. And I mean, look at his pages. Just fire, fire, fire. Oh, look at this panel right here. Oh man.
So that's probably the first time you see Anatu really show out. You know, this is issue 2, and he's, you know, he leaves the city of Dunport early on in issue, or at the end of issue 1. Some things go down, and he's like, man, I know I'm not gonna be comfortable here. Let me go. So he seeks out work, and someone gives him directions to the Cunningham Estates, and let's just say he's going to pay that individual a visit one of these days, and maybe get his
and put the work in.
because he was definitely set up, and so as a result, he has to, you know, he has to survive, right? And then even after this, he still tries to fade into obscurity, but just little by little, his past just catches up with him, and it becomes clear.
He's like another Carlito Brigante, you know, he just can't get out, you know, just keep coming at him. What can he do, yo?
And I said I don't shy away from violence, right? You know, I wanted this to be, again, you look at a lot of the epic fantasy genre, and you have, you know, you have battles, you have skirmishes, you have, you know, fighting pits, you have all these things. And I think you asked me earlier what sets Ennead apart. I like to take my use of that and really be intentional about it from issue to issue. So in issue 1, King Julius and his sons, they are marching to war, and they kind of, you know, things get set off pretty early there. The first 3 pages of Ennead are actually pretty bloody.
Papa's not a good man. Let me tell you.
You know, and he kind of, you know, everybody's the hero of their own story, right? And I think that's the idea I'm playing with Julius for sure, because what he's doing by all means to Athea, and at least the upper crust in Athea, is the right thing to do, you know. But you can tell he's got some bad intentions. And so, you know,
you come bounce off the page on him again. You know, that's a well done job on your part. But you feel the intent of the character. Like, all right, man. I mean, I get it, but then you really gotta be such an asshole.
And, you know, and he did, right? Because so we didn't talk about what the rule of 9 is. So the rule of 9, back in college, I studied philosophy, and so I used to kick around this idea of like this. Basically an oligarchy, right? Like nothing brand new under the sun, but just term limits is something that I feel strongly about. We won't go into politics, but term limits in the Republic Kingdom of Athea last 3 generations. So they're not really all that limiting. But 3 generations, a certain number of families hold power. And after that 3rd generation monarch dies, then the 9 families that rule Athea have to give power back to the people, and people have to choose the next 9 to rule them. Well, King Julius is married to the woman that the power flows through. So King Julius was a general for Queen Ilaria's mother, and basically he, before riding off to war to really win a big prize, probably the biggest prize for Athea that they've ever won in terms of land masses, he asked Queen Elra at the time for his daughter's hand in marriage, and she basically, in so many terms, said, "If you win me this battle, you can marry my daughter." And he does, and he gets to marry the soon-to-be queen. And so when she dies, his sons won't inherit a thing. And so when you look at his behavior now at the beginning of the book, you kind of see why he's going so hard, because he's trying to get it through these kids' heads, these kids who've been handed everything. Like, you're not going to have shit when I'm gone. And you've lived this privileged life. You need to get your shit together, because you're going to be public enemy number 1 to whoever comes to power next.
It's quickly coming to an end, kids.
Yeah. And so, you know, one of his sons really grasps that, and the other one just doesn't get it. And so that is what so yes, he's being an asshole, but again, like, that's doing the right thing. You know, he knows what's going to come to his son's doorstep, and like you said, quick, fast, in a hurry. And so he's just trying to get him prepared.
Not for none. I mean, it's because he's an asshole. I mean, all assholes are evil. Sometimes, an a-hole gotta be an a-hole for reasons. Those a-holes are actually angels that are trying to guide. They're just an a-hole of the moment until you realize the goodness that they're trying to spread.
And that is one of the things that I'm really playing with. Because to me, all of these, again, Amashik is a very old place in my mind, not only in reality but fictionally. It's got history that I've built and played with for a long time now, and each one of these people, like, I know why they're doing what they're doing because I know what their grandfather was doing. I know what their great grandmother was doing. And so in my mind, like, I kind of get lost in who's the hero and who's the villain when I'm telling their story because all of it's so meaningful to me. And even these two, Jan Lusk, who's getting knocked out here by Anatu after he's finally put on that helmet. His backstory is one that I don't know that I'll ever explore on the page, but talk about the rags to riches type. He's someone who takes up the title of bounty hunter in Athea, and he's pretty much Anatu's foil throughout any of the Rule of Nine, and that's really their first kind of foray and first battle with one another. But that's going to be a feud that goes on, throughout. And in those original manuscripts, he's Anatu's partner, and you can see right now that they are not partners in the current volume, and I don't know that they ever will be partners. But when I first wrote him, he was actually, a hero of sorts. And then when I had to introduce Anatu, they kind of, what they were doing clashed immediately from a narrative perspective. And so, like, you just nailed it. Sometimes people are assholes. Sometimes things that they choose to do end up causing immense pain and harm, but everybody thinks they're justified in Amashik. And so I hope, one of my big hopes is that by the time people finish, this is planned for 3 volumes, this leg of
three
volumes. So I'm done. I'm halfway through. The art is done for half of volume 2. It's just a matter of getting back to the Kickstarter grind to get it out to the world.
So how are you going to do the next volume? Are you going on the per issue or is it volume?
So what's funny about that is all year in my head and in my circle, I'm going volume, no more issues. And then I finally came back to the work, right? So back in probably April, I went and basically told all my followers, all my fans, hey, look, I'm taking the summer. I need time. I've been grinding for 3 years straight. Like, I need to take a break. And so I did that. And I did that with every intention of coming back with a 90-page book. And when I came back to it like a week ago, actually in prep for this, like, all right, let me get back in the saddle. I was like, oh no, I need to release these one at a time. So, and not for nothing, but I think a lot of it too is in these last few months, I've really reflected on the best way to use Kickstarter, and Kickstarter's changed a lot in the last few months. And I think what I used to do was, put out, and I still do this, pay for the art up front, get the art done. So the art is in my hands, and then go to Kickstarter and let it get funded that way. And then you have the 2-3 months for everything to get printed, blah, blah, blah. But what I think I might do is pay for the books, get everything printed so that, 6 weeks after the Kickstarter closes, money hits, everything ships out. And I'll take the financial risk of printing a couple hundred copies early, knowing at this point that there are people who are going to pick it up. But yeah, honestly, it was last week that I said, no, I'm probably just going to do like a little blitz of 3 short campaigns rather than putting it out at one chunk. Because I think, to go back to the independent creator bit, part of the fun is being able to do that and watch and listen and interact with the fans bit by bit. I think if I throw everything out at once, then I kind of lose steam as an independent creator. So I'm not sure, but right now I'm leaning closer to single issues. But 2 weeks ago, I would have told you 1 big volume.
I got that single issue out. That way you got some material to do at the convention, something to pimp, that nice storyboarding. When we could get that to Hollywood when it comes back, or wherever it is, the new Hollywood in Georgia, the Tyler Perry building too. Whatever it is, let's make it happen.
What is those are the dreams, right? I've always seen this thing bigger than bigger than me because of how real these characters are to me. I think if nothing else, their story is worth it, right? Because each one of these characters, like I said, they've in my mind, I see their entire life in front of me. The ones who make it to the end and the ones who don't. And at this point, it really means something to me what happens to Anatu and how people receive it, and whether or not they like it is off to the side. But I wanted to hold meaning for the people who read what I'm doing. And so I think about the people who have really stuck with me since issue 1 and how they would feel if instead of being able to collect this thing 1 through 21 or 1 through 22, wherever I land, they were able to collect 1 through 7, but now they can't have 8, 9, 10, right? Yeah. And so I thought, and that's from getting to talk to comic book collectors at these conventions. And I'm like, it's cool that you have this big book, but like, where are the single issues though? Like, and that was, so that's something that I'm really thinking.
We love our books, no matter. Don't let the digital world make you think any differently. Us nerds still love our physical product. We love our shelf form. We wanna torture ourselves when we move and carry heavy boxes of comics everywhere. I mean, I moved several times, and if I lugged it, that people look at me like you're moving those, but. It is what it is. That's our love. That's our passion. So, talk about you being in any conventions, and bringing this product with you. You're going to be anywhere for the rest of this year?
So, the rest of this year, there's nothing on the schedule right now. My wife and I, we bought a home in April, and we've been working at.
Congrats.
Thank you. I'm actually sitting in it right now, so we're probably moving in the next few weeks.
Are you going to get a man cave?
Once again, I have it.
He had it.
I have it.
He got.
I will be honest. I will be, or at least appreciate you. One of my truest fans to date. Orly, I hope you appreciate the care package that I know you just received. But one of the I'm sitting in another empty room, by the way, recording something. But I'll be honest with the people. My man cave is just a closet, but it's a big closet. And I'm going to love this closet. I'm going to record, content in this closet for.
It really is a little cave then.
It is. It's tucked around in the basement. My daughter's playroom is right on the other side of it, but I managed to secure one.
That's what that matters, man. It took me years to finally get my man cave, and now I got 2.
I'm excited because it comes with like built-in shelving in there. So you talk about all the things you want to show off, and you got your, so I'm very excited to bring the next phase of Ennead to life because it's going to come with those collectibles. It's going to come with the.
We getting figures, bro. We getting figures.
Yes,
to
sir.
accompany that weapon.
Yes, sir.
So easy. He brings the weapon before the character.
That was the test run for the 3D figures. So there's an image that I used for the rear cover of every issue in volume 1. And this is another thing that I don't want to get lost and why I'm leaning towards going single issue again. I had this idea that when I play with this on that collector's box, that everything is telling an Anatu story, right? So there are panels on that collector's box. And if you look at that from left to right, that's Anatu's journey through volume 1. And on the back side, it's kind of where he is at the end of volume 1. And who he is. And so I'm doing the same thing on the rear cover. So on the rear cover of volume 1, all those issues, it's him walking with that staff when he first gets to Athea. And now volume 2, which is kind of that in between, he's sitting and he's really tired and he's contemplating, what I get into. And then the image for volume 3 will kind of show where he is, which again, not really a spoiler, will be in the midst of some conflict. And so those are all little things that I'm trying to do, little pieces of flair that I'm trying to add to this world. So the story is as vibrant again for the people who experience it as it is for me.
Wonderful. You hear this? This is an awesome creator. All right. So when's the next project lined up for?
So the long and short answer to that is I could hit. I have a campaign right now. It's in the pre-launch phase. I got like 60 some odd followers on it, and I could hit launch on that today and be able to fulfill that with no problem. It's a matter of getting my mental ready for it.
Okay.
And so what I told Melissa, shout out to Melissa Mazzarios, who put us in touch. You know, I told her that this fall I will drop Q3. I will drop. I am looking currently in the October range. My first Kickstarter came out in October in 2020. So I kind of want to bring that back to kind of launch volume 2, 3 years to the day after volume 1.
Yeah.
That would put us, I believe, October 5th, if my memory serves me correct, but somewhere in that range. And, you know, I've been on Substack for a while now, so I'm coming back to Substack next month. I'm excited for that. Been doing some world building on Substack, some prose writing on Substack. So this world exists in a few different places, and I want to keep that going. My big dream for Amashik and Ennead and the Rule of 9 is that, let's say you decide to pick up a novel set in this world. Let's say you decide to pick up a comic set in this world. Let's say you pick up the eventual board game that I want to bring out. You can jump into this world anywhere on this timeline, and it feel fresh, it feel new, it feel complete. But then just beyond it, you've got all these other avenues to experience this world. And so I still have every intention of bringing that to life. And it was just a matter of me, like I said early on, appreciating and sitting in and being proud of that work that myself and my team put in to really respect it enough to bring that home and push the next leg of it. Because as anybody who does this independent comic thing or any kind of independent creation, you know this well, 352 episodes is no joke. You know, it's a slog, you know, it's you and it's you and it's you and it's you, right? You get support along the way, but if you decide to stop, where else is it going, you know? And so I definitely needed the time, and even seeing Orly in here jumping in after all this time, and really no contact, right? You know, she and we communicate every now and then, but for the most part, no contact with the fandom. But to have somebody jump in, that's that reminder that, oh yeah, you got to keep going.
You absolutely do, brother. You have a wonderful product, and as a fan of such products, I want to say thank you to you, a creator, that's putting your vision out there and sharing it with us, and, you know, and for taking the steps to do, you know, and overcoming that fear or that doubt. Thank you, because you do have something that's amazing. It's a great read. I can't wait to finish, because as soon as we're done, I'm going to finish it, because I have another couple of hours before I do something else. So, Adam, if I'm late, I'm sorry. I got to finish reading this. Dude, it's a great book. I'm not lying. You know, it's for real. It's a wonderful read. I'm digging the characters already. Like, you know what I mean. I'm seeing what's popping. Like, all right, I'm seeing the action pop off. You know, but again, there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of chit chat, and like, all right, what's popping? Wait a minute. So yeah, you definitely did something well here. You know, with a wonderful ensemble cast.
Thank you. You know, each one of these characters has a little bit of me in them, you know, and I think any creator would tell you this, right? Your characters are your kids, they're your babies, but really, like, in certain moments in my life, I am King Julius. I'm that person who's singularly focused. I don't care who I step on. I got to get this done. Other times I feel like Queen Ilaria, where I have this huge legacy before me and behind me and all around me that I got to live up to. Other times not to. I want to run. Fuck it all. I got to be on my own. This is too much. It's too heavy. You think about some of the other characters that, you know, get introduced later on. You know, one of my favorite characters is a kind of a post-credits introduction at the end of issue 6. And they come back once again in full force in issue 9. And all I'll say is Lady Elswine is her name. And I imagine a dark side force user who has full control over all the Jedi mind tricks. That is who Elswine is. And I can't wait to be able to fold her into everything else that's going on. Her story is one that, like, I really truly resonate with. And just to give a little tease, you know, her bloodline is ancient, and it is rooted in something really special. but what they had was taken from them. And so she tries to do the Buddhist thing, right? Tries to go off into the mountains, into the woods, find herself. And she does, but she doesn't find what she thought she was going to find. And she finds this need for vengeance. And so when she enters the story, she's talking about headlockers. She's coming, she's coming to fulfill something. And so, she's like a big wrecking ball to everything else that you see. And she has the power to kind of, and the force to kind of really make some things happen. So again, like all of this, as soon as I turn my focus back to it, I'm right back in it. Like I'm back in the world. And so I'm looking forward to when the next project drops, just being able to, move the yard markers one more time.
There we go. I can't wait for that to happen. And folks, you got to stay tuned. But you know how you stay tuned? As he had mentioned earlier, he does have a Substack. So, and he's getting back on the game. So check, it's right there, Ennead, the rule of 9.substack.com. But guess what? I'm making life easy. So the link is below at the notes. So, you just click away. Not just that one. We got his Insta here as well. Because again, there's where you kind of do a little bit more of your social link, correct?
That is the place. That's the best place to reach out. Before I left, Twitter was Twitter. Now it's X. I don't know what the fuck's going on over there.
It's X, Facebook is Meta, and everything's changing. Oh my God, where are we going, yo?
Just find me on Instagram. I'll make my way back to X.
It's too bad. There's a couple of things that for the creator that you could, have a chance to make some revenue if you know how to play the social game. So
the handle is the same on X, Twitter, unless they kick me off. I really don't know. I don't think.
Why would they kick you off? You still in trouble.
I haven't opened it in a couple of months, but yeah, same thing. Ennead _ I tell people at all the conventions, put in Ennead _ on any of your searches, and I'll come up. You'll either see Anatu or you'll see my head, and so you'll definitely be able to find what I got.
Well, thank you for your time today, my brother. I appreciate you talking about the greatness of the world building, your journey, as an independent, building, crowdfunding, a lot of amazing topics we'll discuss today again. So thank you, JL, for your time. Mi gente, thank you for tuning in. You better check out my homie right here. Again, as I stated, all the links are below, a ton of them. So follow him on every single platform. Show the love for amazing independent creators, because that's what we celebrate on the Comic Crusaders podcast and on the comiccrusaders.com website. So show the love, all right, mi gente? Thank you for tuning in. Subscribe, turn on notifications. Check out mi gente at undercovercapes.com as well. I am Al Mega. Hasta la próxima. Wepa!
Thank you for listening to the Comic Crusaders podcast. If you like the content, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Also, please visit comiccrusaders.com and our extended podcast family over at undercovercapes.com. And also make sure to download the Comic Crusaders app on the Google Play Store today.